On what would have been Princess Diana's birthday, Prince William made a shocking decision. He opened her tomb. What he saw inside left him pale, speechless, and forever changed. Hidden injuries, a secret letter, and a mother's final warning shattered everything he believed. The truth didn't die with Diana. It waited. Diana's birthday, the day William finally said yes. July 1st, a date that always carried quiet pain inside Kensington Palace, came with a strange heaviness this year. It marked what would have been Princess Diana's 64th birthday, a day the world remembered with flowers, tributes, and candlelight, while her eldest son, Prince William, carried the weight silently behind closed doors. But something was different this time. For decades, William had avoided Althorp, his mother's final resting place. He had visited the grounds rarely, always in private, and never stayed long. The island on Oval Lake, beautiful and still, was sacred ground, and one that held more than just memory. It held mystery and questions. Behind palace doors, a series of sealed documents had quietly resurfaced earlier in the year, part of a legal archive transfer. Buried in bureaucratic records was a forensic discrepancy tied to Diana's burial and dated late 1997, months after the crash in Paris. A specialist flagged it. A private medical consultant read it. And eventually, the file made its way into William's hands. One former aide said, "There was a moment of silence in the room. He just stared at the page, then quietly said, 'I want to know everything.'" After weeks of back and forth between royal legal teams, historic preservation authorities, and discreet medical experts, legal approval was quietly granted. No public announcement. No leaks. The decision was locked under royal protection protocols. William had said yes to something no royal in modern history had ever requested: a private re-examination of his mother's final resting place. For him, it wasn't about conspiracy. It wasn't about tabloids. It was about truth and the right to look his children in the eye and say, "I did everything I could." And so, on July 1st, 2025, exactly 28 years after her death, Prince William returned to Althorp, not as the heir to the throne, but as a son standing at the gates of his own grief. What he would find inside the tomb would leave him forever changed. The tomb at Althorp is opened in silence. The morning sky over Althorp Estate was pale and still. At first light, the Oval Lake was sealed off by a small team of private security, forensic experts, and royal representatives. There were no camera crews, no royal family members beyond William himself. Even Prince Harry had not been told, not yet. This was not for show. This was for truth. A single white tent had been erected on the small island that held Diana's marble memorial. Beneath it, a crew of preservation specialists and forensic pathologists began the delicate process of opening the stone chamber that had remained untouched since September 1997. One royal staff member, present as part of legal observation, later said, "It was so quiet. You could hear the wind moving through the trees." Everyone felt it, like time had stopped. As the stone slab was slowly lifted away, a sense of coldness seemed to settle over the space. The air shifted. Even those trained in forensic environments said they felt something unnatural. Beneath the protective layer of sealed stone, the coffin remained perfectly preserved, surrounded by artifacts and burial items selected by Diana's family at the time: a silk scarf, a few letters, and photographs. But it was what came next that no one expected. William stepped forward alone, refusing aids, guards, or counsel. For nearly 20 minutes, he stood at the foot of the chamber in absolute silence, his face pale, his posture rigid, as if confronting not just loss, but something deeper. One eyewitness whispered, "It was like he was staring into the past and seeing everything he was never told." This was no memory. This was reality, untouched and unedited. The weight of grief, guilt, and royal secrecy all collided in that moment. This wasn't just his mother's tomb, it was a time capsule of unanswered questions. And William had come to get answers. Next came the decision that would shift the energy of the room completely and change the direction of everything. The coffin was to be unsealed. What they found inside would leave even the experts rattled. William's first glimpse leaves him visibly shaken. When the coffin was fully revealed, the air inside the tent changed. It wasn't dramatic, it was heavy. The kind of silence that presses on the chest. The mahogany coffin, sealed since 1997, lay intact, preserved far better than anyone expected after nearly 3 decades underground. Prince William took a single step forward. That was all. Those closest to him noticed it immediately. His face drained of color, his jaw tightened, his hands curled slightly at his sides. This wasn't the controlled public figure the world knows. This was a son confronting a moment he had avoided his entire life. A forensic specialist softly confirmed the seal integrity and preservation status, but William didn't respond. He was staring, not at the coffin itself, but at the finality of it. This wasn't a photograph in a frame. This wasn't a memory filtered through time. This was undeniably real. One aide later said quietly, "I've never seen him like that, not even during the darkest family moments. It was like the ground disappeared beneath him." William stood frozen for several minutes. No questions, no instructions, just silence. He had grown up with the story of Diana's death repeated endlessly. The Paris tunnel, the crash, the headlines. But standing there, inches away from the place where her body had rested since September 6, 1997, something shifted. This wasn't history. This was unresolved grief. A senior medical consultant asked if he wished to pause. William shook his head. His breathing became shallow. His eyes glassed over, not with tears yet, but with shock. One observer described it as watching a man lose his mother all over again, but this time with adult understanding. "This changes nothing," William said quietly at first. Then he corrected himself. "This changes everything." The professionals exchanged glances. They understood. This was no longer just a procedural review. It had become deeply personal. William requested the burial chamber lighting be increased. As the interior became clearer, small details emerged. Details that would lead directly to the next disturbing discovery. Because what lay around the coffin didn't match what anyone expected. And that's when unease turned into concern. Disturbing signs inside the burial chamber. As specialists examined the interior of the burial chamber, something immediately felt off. The environment was stable. The seal had done its job. Yet several personal items buried alongside Princess Diana showed unexpected deterioration, patterns that didn't align with preservation records from 1997. A silk scarf, known to have been placed beside the coffin by her brother, appeared frayed and discolored, far beyond what time alone should cause. Letter fragments, believed to be from her sons, showed signs of moisture exposure inconsistent with the chamber's integrity. One forensic examiner paused and said quietly, "This doesn't add up." Then attention shifted to the chamber itself. The stone lining near the northern panel showed scrape marks, faint but deliberate. Measurements confirmed slight misalignment, as if a section had been moved and reset. These details were not mentioned in any official burial documentation from August 1997. Even more troubling, a sealed side panel, meant to be purely structural, appeared to have been disturbed at some point after burial. There was no record of authorized access, no logged maintenance, no explanation. William noticed the change in tone immediately. "What aren't you saying?" he asked. A senior forensic architect responded carefully. "Sir, there are indicators of post-burial interference. We don't know when, but it wasn't part of the original interment." The words hung in the air. William clenched his fists. This was no longer theoretical, no longer emotional. This was physical evidence that something, or someone, had altered the site. Experts began documenting everything with precision. Measurements, photographs, material samples. The process slowed. Each movement became deliberate, careful, almost cautious. One advisor whispered, "If this is real, this changes the historical record." William stepped back, running a hand across his face. For years, questions surrounding Diana's death had been dismissed as rumor, speculation, or grief-fueled doubt. But standing inside the tomb, surrounded by unexplained anomalies, William realized something chilling. The truth might not be buried. It might have been disturbed. And the next step, opening the coffin itself, would either close this chapter forever or blow it wide open. The coffin is unsealed, and everything changes. The decision no one wanted to voice was finally made without words. Prince William didn't speak. He didn't hesitate. He simply nodded once. That was enough. The forensic lead gave the signal, and the team moved into position. Every motion was slow, deliberate, almost reverent. This was not procedure anymore. This was history being reopened. The seal, untouched since 1997, was carefully released. A faint sound echoed through the chamber as decades of silence were broken. When the coffin lid was lifted, time collapsed. William stepped forward instinctively, then stopped. His breath caught. The experts froze. What lay before them didn't match the official record they had studied for years. The remains were preserved far beyond expectations, but it was the visible trauma that stunned the room. Certain injury patterns were immediately noticeable, not hidden, not subtle. Areas of bruising appeared in places never referenced in the original autopsy. The distribution wasn't random. It followed a logic that troubled even the most seasoned professionals present. A forensic pathologist whispered, "This doesn't align with a single impact collision." William's face tightened. He asked one question, quiet, controlled, but heavy with meaning. "Are you saying the report was wrong?" No one answered immediately. Several fractures appeared compressed rather than shattered, suggesting sustained pressure rather than sudden force. The positioning of certain injuries raised serious questions about timing, whether they occurred before or after the crash itself. One expert stepped back, shaking their head slightly. "We were not prepared to see this." The atmosphere shifted from somber to electric. This was no longer an emotional revisit. This was a medical contradiction, one that challenged the very foundation of what the world had been told for nearly 3 decades. William closed his eyes briefly. When he opened them, his expression had changed. The grief was still there, but something else had taken its place. Resolve. And the deeper they looked, the worse it became. The medical findings that shook the experts. What followed felt less like an examination and more like an awakening. Under controlled conditions, the forensic team began documenting injuries in detail. Rib fractures showed angles inconsistent with forward impact trauma. Pelvic damage suggested compression from more than one direction. These weren't assumptions, they were measurable, documented anomalies. One medical consultant said quietly, "These injuries have sequencing. That's not typical of an accident." Then came the marks. Subtle impressions on the wrists and forearms, nearly overlooked at first, suggested possible restraint or pressure application. Not definitive, but troubling enough to warrant immediate concern. The room fell silent as photographs were taken. But the most shocking discovery came next. Evidence of surgical intervention, minimal, precise, appeared in areas never mentioned in official records. No notation, no follow-up documentation, nothing. The implication was chilling. Something had been done, and it had never been acknowledged. A toxicology specialist then requested permission for targeted sampling. When the results came back, the tension snapped. A foreign chemical trace, degraded but identifiable, was detected within preserved tissue. It wasn't lethal on its own, but it should not have been there. One expert muttered under their breath, "This doesn't belong in the official timeline." William stepped back, gripping the edge of the stone chamber. His voice was steady but quiet. So someone knew more than they said. No one disagreed. The team agreed unanimously. These findings could not be dismissed. They required independent review, historical cross-checking, and legal protection. This wasn't speculation. This was evidence. A senior advisor leaned in and said, "Sir, once this leaves this chamber, there's no going back." William nodded slowly. "Then we don't hide it," he replied. "We protect it." By the time the coffin was resealed, the energy inside the tomb had changed completely. What began as a son seeking peace had turned into something far more dangerous. This was no longer about the past. It was about what had been buried and why. And next, a single letter fragment, hidden beneath the lining, would bring the investigation to a standstill and break William completely. The letter fragment that stopped everything. Just as the forensic team began sealing the coffin again, one final sweep revealed something wedged beneath the interior lining. A folded piece of aged parchment, partially preserved, fragile to the touch. It hadn't been catalogued in the original 1997 burial documents. A small corner of the page was burned or degraded, but a few details were unmistakable. At the top, DS, the initials of Diana Spencer. The handwriting, once verified, matched archived letters from Diana in the mid-90s. But it was the content, barely legible, faded, that changed the room entirely. One line stood out, "If something happens, protect William." Another chilling phrase followed, "The betrayal will come from within." The room froze. William, pale and silent, asked for everyone to leave. Alone, he held the fragment in his hands for nearly 20 minutes. When the team returned, his eyes were red, his expression unreadable. A witness recalled him whispering, "She knew." The letter wasn't long, it wasn't detailed, but it was clear enough to matter, and vague enough to haunt. It wasn't official. It wasn't part of any estate file. And yet, it might be the most personal evidence ever uncovered about Diana's state of mind in the months before her death. Experts debated whether to preserve it or release it. William made the decision instantly. No more hiding. This comes with me. And with that, Grief gave way to fury, and a long-buried suspicion turned into personal conviction. William's emotional collapse behind closed doors. After the burial chamber at Althorpe was sealed once more, the team quietly stepped away, leaving Prince William alone on the island with his thoughts. He stood in stillness, staring across the lake, where the trees whispered in the breeze, as if shielding him from the world he would soon have to return to. When he finally walked back to the estate house, his entire presence had shifted. He didn't speak. He didn't make eye contact. He walked with quiet, almost mechanical precision. Straight down the corridor, into a private room, and shut the door. Nearly an hour passed in silence before his senior advisor gently entered. What they saw was not the future king, not the polished, disciplined royal the world knew, but a man stripped bare. William sat on the floor, back pressed against the wall, knees drawn in. His face was streaked with tears, his breathing shallow. "They lied to me," he whispered. "All these years, they lied." It wasn't grief anymore. It was something deeper. The illusion had shattered. For over 2 decades, he had mourned his mother under the public eye, told to move forward, to protect the image, to carry the crown. But now, after what he had witnessed in that tomb, the forensic contradictions, the tampered burial site, and his mother's haunting final message, the weight became unbearable. This wasn't about the past anymore. It was about the cover-up. He stood eventually, eyes red but steady. And with a voice that had found steel beneath sorrow, he said, "Get me everything. Diana's letters, the autopsy notes, every name that signed off in 1997. I want it all." By nightfall, William was no longer the grieving son. He was preparing for battle. Not against the press, not against the people, but against the silence that had protected the lies for too long. And by the time the palace caught wind of what had happened that day, it was already too late to contain it. The truth was coming. Ellis panic as the truth reaches the top. Within hours of Prince William's return to London, red-level alerts were triggered across Clarence House and Buckingham Palace. Senior aides, legal advisors, and private secretaries were summoned for urgent briefings. The confidential report from Althorpe, containing details of unrecorded injuries, forensic inconsistencies, a foreign chemical trace, and most damning of all, Princess Diana's handwritten warning, was hand-delivered under strict security protocols. When King Charles reviewed the file, aides say he visibly paled, standing silently for several minutes before instructing the room to be cleared. One senior official later described the mood. "We haven't seen this level of internal fear since 1997. It wasn't just shock, it was the realization that this could upend everything." Behind closed doors, Camilla was briefed separately. According to palace insiders, she showed no emotion, but within hours had contacted 2 top legal advisors. Her reported strategy was to contain the narrative and prepare for rebuttal, with a focus on discrediting emotionally charged claims and protecting the institution. Discussions about how to address the public started immediately. Press officers drafted cautious responses. Lawyers advised total silence. But William shut it all down. "This isn't a scandal," he said firmly. "It's my mother. You don't spin the truth." For the first time in years, the palace found itself split down the middle. Some backed William, seeing his actions as bold, righteous, and necessary. Others feared he was opening Pandora's box, threatening to destabilize the crown with questions no one was prepared to answer. Lines were drawn. Quiet alliances were formed in corners of the palace. Most people never see. The future king had just challenged the royal machine, and the machine was rattling. And as word spread internally of what William intended to do next, reopen investigations, contact foreign authorities, and even speak to Prince Harry, panic turned to crisis. Because this wasn't just about what happened to Diana in 1997. This was about what the monarchy did or didn't do after. And the answers, long buried, were finally coming to light. William's mission begins, and nothing is the same. Within 24 hours of leaving Althorp, Prince William was no longer grieving. He was mobilizing. His first move was bold. He ordered access to sealed royal archives directly tied to the 1997 crash in Paris. These weren't just documents. They were files long buried under sensitive status by multiple departments. William used his personal authority as heir to the throne to bypass decades of protocol. Names that hadn't been spoken in years were suddenly back on the palace radar. Former MI6 handlers, private security contractors, pathologists, even members of the French medical response team who had treated Diana during her final moments in the hospital. But the most unexpected action came next. He reached out to Prince Harry. It was the first true communication between the brothers in months, maybe years, that wasn't through aides, lawyers, or cold protocol. William didn't demand help. He didn't lay blame. Instead, he sent one clear message. This isn't about us. It's about her. Insiders say Harry was stunned, moved, and for the first time in a long time, he listened. Behind the scenes, international legal teams were contacted discreetly, not to start a media firestorm, but to build protection and, more importantly, a path forward. If new evidence had emerged, and if past files showed contradictions, there had to be a secure channel to bring it to light without political interference. Foreign authorities, including private French legal consultants and European human rights observers, were briefed on what had been uncovered. No press statements, no leaks, but something was happening, and those in the inner circle knew it. A new investigation hadn't been officially launched, not yet, but every move, every phone call, every file reopened pointed in one clear direction. William was ready to finish what his mother never could. This wasn't about revenge. This was about truth, justice, and legacy. She died alone, William reportedly said, but the truth won't stay buried with her. The monarchy will survive, but it won't look the same when this ends. Because from the moment William gave that silent nod to open the tomb, he became more than just the future king. He became Diana's voice. And nothing, not time, not titles, not silence, would stop him now. What began as a quiet tribute on Diana's birthday became a turning point in royal history. Prince William uncovered far more than he ever expected: disturbing evidence, hidden secrets, and a haunting message from his mother. It wasn't just grief he felt. It was betrayal. Now, he's no longer seeking comfort. He's seeking truth. With new files opened, investigators called back, and even Harry brought into the fold. The silence surrounding Diana's death may finally be broken. The question isn't what William saw, it's what he's going to do next. Because once the tomb was opened, nothing could be hidden again.